There was a Friday, a Good Friday actually, when we were 1 month from losing our home. 2 years without a salary, four boys, and then the phone rang. What happened next is the reason this podcast exists. I'm Kevin,
I'm Kavita.
and we built this so that you would know whatever you're walking through right now, He was faithful then, and He will be faithful now. Welcome everyone back to our podcast. We are so happy you decided to join us for a second episode. We are excited to share with you more stories about our journey and how God has been faithful to us. This episode in particular is for anyone out there who is waiting, anyone who has done everything right and you're still hitting a wall. On those days when it feels like you wake up and it's the same routine and you try and try and try, but when you go to bed at night, it feels like you've taken two steps back instead of one step forward. We've been there. I've been there. We're going to tell you exactly what 2 years of unemployment looks like from the inside. And then we're going to tell you what God did in the middle of it. Now, before I tell you about our move from Malaysia to Poland, I need you to understand that this wasn't where the wilderness started for us. In the last episode, we spoke about our backgrounds and how Kavita and I met. But I also said that the real challenges were coming. And that's exactly what happened. Shortly before we were going to get married, Kavita lost a job for the first time. In the course of the next 8 years, she would lose her job again. And then there was the whole issue with Jaden and him being born deaf. 9 hour surgery, a $70,000 medical bill that we had to foot. There was a medical issue with my mom where she fell down and she had severe brain damage. And then at the end of it, the part that we are going to talk about today is when I lost my job. But I'm giving you all of that background as context, right? The wilderness didn't begin when I lost my job. The wilderness began, well, even before we got married. And this episode, this podcast today is about how God was there for us or how God showed up in that wilderness. Now, I'll take you back to the year 2023. As those of you who listened to the previous podcast know, I was successful. I had a very good career. I was doing very well. But because of circumstances with Kavita being unemployed at various times and then the medical bills, money was tight. At times, money was almost non existent. Whatever I earned was going out for other things. 2023, the worst thing that could have happened happened. I lost my job. Thankfully, this was the period when Kavita was employed, so we still had income coming into the family. I did get a package as I was released from the company, and so I had a plan, right? This was my intelligence kicking in. I've got a package, it can tide us over for a few months, and by then, getting a new job should not be a problem. Any of you who is in the job market right now will know what it is. It is brutal. And I had no idea going into that because by this point I'd been working for 20 years, right? The job market that I knew when I first started my career was very different to the job market today. So the weeks turned into months and eventually into years, and the panic starts to set in, right? And throughout that time, because Kavita was the sole provider, we had very little to go on. There were times when the bank account was zero. And I'm always reminded of the story from First Kings about Elijah and the widow at Zarephath. She had nothing left. She had a handful of flour, she had a little bit of oil, And there was just enough for her to make one last meal, to bake bread for one last time, because there was a famine in the land, and for her and her son to eat that last meal. And then her plan literally was to lie down with her son and die, right? But then Elijah shows up and Elijah says, "Make me something to eat." And she says, "This is all I have." But Elijah says, "Do not fear. Make me something to eat." So she does. She gives the last of what she has to this prophet. He has his meal. And then the miracle happens. The flour never runs out. The oil never runs out. For the next few years, there is always food for them to eat. God miraculously provides until the rain comes. And that was us. We had no money in the account. Our credit cards were maxed out. But yet, there was always 3 square meals on the table every single day. There was always a roof over our heads. And I cannot tell you how that happened. I cannot tell you how God provisioned that for us. I can just tell you that it was there. That suddenly there would be money in the account. Where did it come from? Oh, you got a tax return. A tax return. Right? The government never gives you money back. But the government would give us money back. And when we would call and check, because we are worried that this was a mistake, they say, "No, it's fine. You overpaid all these years and here's a tax return." So that would get us through another
Yeah,
2 or 3
I
months.
remember same as me as well. Out of the blue, just get something from the government. I was like, oh no, I don't want it. Please take it back. But yeah, it was genuinely something that we didn't expect. Yeah.
Yeah. So God provided. I don't know how, but He did.
Yeah.
Now, throughout this time, just after I lost my job, Kavita, in her job, got an offer to transfer to Poland. It was a big decision for us because, besides the fact that I was jobless, coming to Poland would mean I would have to be jobless for a longer period. I couldn't just come to Poland and find a job. There are processes that you need to follow, right? You need to get a residence card, and once you get the residence card, only then are you allowed to work. What we found out was that entire process can take about 9 months. So, in addition to the time between then and when we left to Poland, tack on another 9 months on top of that. The saving grace was that as part of a transfer, Kavita would get a special allowance. And with our calculation, it worked out to just enough to get us through that period of 9 months until I got a job. So we said, all right. We made that decision in prayer, of course. In fact, one of the first things we did was we found a church. Before we found a home, before we found where a district that we wanted to live in, before we thought about where the boys would go to school, the first thing we did was, if we're going to Poland, we need to have a good church. And so I sent an email to Pastor Harry, who is the pastor of Warsaw International Church. Wonderful man, him and his wife Anya. We got to know them months before we even set foot in Poland. So that was secured. The first thing we secured was we need to have a church. When we came to Poland, the reality of that wait for the residence card began to sink in. What we were told was on paper 9 months wasn't the reality. People that we knew who had gone through that same process told us that they had been waiting for a year, sometimes 2 years. When you go into the forums online, people are saying it's been 2 years and I still haven't got it. And that was just not an option for us, right?
Yeah, I think we have also heard from friends and all that as well. I think from colleagues as well, right? From myself, I've heard they had to wait for 6 months, no, a year at least, minimum, yeah, a year or more, right? Some even waited more than a year and they can't even go out from the country because they have to wait until they get their residence card.
And these were colleagues who came with you on the same
Yes.
under same circumstances that you
Yes.
came.
Yeah.
So this is the scope of the impossibility of what we were facing. But we were already here and there was nothing to do but plow on. So we arrived in August of 2024. In that time, I wanted to go and get the applications done as quickly as possible, but there were no slots available. So the earliest we could go and submit our documents was in October. So that's already 2 months eaten off. To put this in a timeline so that you can follow, money runs out in April of 2025, right? That's how much we had. That's how much breathing room we had. This is considering that Kavita is earning a salary as well. Money would run out by April of 2025. We were now in October of 2024. We put in the applications. They said you need to wait at least minimum 6 months for you to just to know what the result is. We prayed. That's all we could do. We prayed. People who thought I was still in Malaysia were offering me jobs. And honestly, it would have been very easy for me to take those jobs without telling them that I wasn't in Malaysia. But I did not want to be dishonest. In fact, there was a job offer just before we left. And the recruiter was telling me, you know what, don't tell them about your plans to go to Poland. It's a job because the recruiter gets paid on commission, right? So the recruiter was just saying, just take the job, and then after a few months, you can tell them that you have this plan to move to Poland. You never know, they might agree to let you work remotely or things like that. But that didn't feel honest to me. No matter what, even though we were desperate, even though money was the biggest worry in both our heads at that point in time, we didn't want to earn a single dishonest cent, right? So I told the recruiter, no, I want to do this the right way. I'm going to tell them upfront. If they don't like it, it's fine. And the recruiter was adamant against it. So eventually I just turned the job down. But back to Poland. So we're here. We had submitted our documents. We were told 6 months. Miracle of miracles. Within 2 months, in December, we get an email saying your application has been approved.
We submitted in, I still remember the exact date, October 29. It was Tristan's birthday.
Tristan's birthday.
Yeah, I remember we had the appointment on that day.
Yep.
6 of us, the slot.
Yeah.
And it was very hard to get the slot because
Yeah.
we are a large family,
Yeah.
right? It's easy for you to go if you're alone or 2 people or whatever, but 6 people
Yeah,
considering
6 at once.
it's very difficult, but we still got it after a few months, 3 months, right?
Yeah.
So we got the appointment on October 29, and then we got the confirmation email in
Mid-December. So even less than 2 months.
Yes,
Less than 2 months.
yeah.
We got your application has been approved. You can come and collect your residence cards in January. So then we come to January and we go collect the cards, right?
Yeah.
Now this is January. At this point, we are 3 months away from being at zero, with having no money at all and being homeless. Literally, we would have to move out of the house we were renting.
Whatever package that was given to us to be able to survive or whatever, that 1 year, whatever, we had already used up everything.
Yeah.
So I remember your plan, your calculation and all that. We were in the edge of it already.
Yep. So we get to this point, and at exactly around this time, Pastor Harry calls me and he says, Kevin, there's a group that wants to have a regular prayer meeting / Bible study weekly, and they're looking for a place. And I remembered this one thing, right? So we grew up poor and we lived in a very tiny flat, if you remember us talking about this in episode 1. And the same thing had happened to her. The church had approached her and said, we want to start a cell group in your home. So my mom said, okay, come in. We have a small home, but we'll make it available to you and you can start meeting in our home. And I remember her telling me this. She said, Kevin, when you open your doors to God, that's when you also open up your doors to the blessings that God can give you. And you know what? She was right. From that tiny flat, we moved into a small house. It was small, but it was a house, right? We had a very small front yard, but we had a front yard. We had an even smaller backyard, but we had a backyard. And then from there, she did the same thing. She opened up our home to God, and we moved to a bigger house, a 2-story house with a nice big garden. And I remembered that when Pastor asked me this question, I remembered that lesson that she taught me. And I want to say to my mom, who is listening, who better be listening because this is her son's podcast. Mummy, thank you for teaching me that lesson, because I really believe that the miracle that was going to happen happened because of that lesson you taught me. So we opened up our home and they would come every Saturday and they would have a prayer meeting here. Now the clock starts ticking. Just because of the move to Poland and things like that, it didn't mean that I had stopped applying for jobs. I had been applying. I'd sent out hundreds of applications.
No, I remember. It was very stressful, to be
It was.
honest. Yeah. And not only hundreds of applications, but the amount of phone calls every morning.
Calling people, asking
friends,
for referrals.
yeah,
Hey, can you help me?
Yeah.
Nothing, right? Nothing. Not a single response.
Connections as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so-called connections.
Yeah.
And nothing had worked. And this was 1.5 years, almost 2 years of doing this, and nothing had worked. And now we were on a 3-month deadline for something to work. Impossible, but we had no choice, right? I had to keep going forward, because if I did not go forward, we would lose everything. So you have no choice but to keep going forward. As bleak as it feels, as impossible as it seems, you don't have that choice. So I did. And as the months went by, it got harder. It got harder and harder and harder to believe that a miracle was going to happen, that I was going to get a job. 3 months of money left, 2 months of money left, 1 month of money left,
1 week of money
1 week of money left. And around the beginning of March is when Lent started. And with Lent, we both decided, you know what? We have this practice that we used to do in Malaysia, but not diligently. Is that during Lent, we would give up something, right? And it would usually be meat. We would go vegetarian for the entire period, just Kavita and I. So this year, we decided, you know what? We're going to do this right. Not just that we're going to do it, but we're going to do this right.
You're talking about the whole 40 days.
The whole 40 days. And we're not just going to go on this vegetarian fast, but we're going to fast and pray.
Correct.
Right? So we would start every morning with a prayer. We would end every evening and then go to bed every night with a prayer that the boys would lead. I would have my quiet time. Kavita would have her quiet time. And then as a family, we would come together and we would pray and the boys would lead. And every prayer was the same thing. Give daddy a job.
Yeah.
Help daddy find a job. Every night for 40 days.
And this time we fasted and with the whole family, including the boys as well.
Correct. All the boys, even Aiden.
Yeah.
Aiden was
Two.
two.
Yeah.
One or two,
Almost.
Aiden.
Yeah. Almost.
Yeah. This Lent was a very trying period for me because, like I said, the clock was ticking, the pressure was mounting, right? And my self confidence and my self worth was practically at zero. I was the man of the house. I was the father. I was the husband. I was supposed to be the provider. But I was doing nothing. My days was just waking up, fine-tuning CVs, sending applications, calling people, hey, can you help me find a job? Let me tell you, nothing feels so small as when you have to keep asking everyone over and over and over again, help me, help me, help me.
That's why you had to put your ego, your pride, everything away because you needed that desperately.
Yes. And by the end of it, you feel tiny, you feel minuscule, you feel worthless.
Yeah.
And that is how I felt. And when I went into my quiet time, that was also how I felt. I felt worthless. And I would ask God, why did you do this to me? Why did you bring us here so we could fail? Because let me tell you the thing about how God brought us here, right? I always think that if we weren't meant to come to Poland, God would have blocked it. Because in that 6-month period, as we were preparing to migrate, there's a lot of formalities and paperwork that you need to go through. You've got to submit all kinds of documents, you've got to get all kinds of approvals, provide proof of all kinds of things like that. And in that period, there were many potential roadblocks or showstoppers. I'll give you an example of one of those situations. Kavita needed to get a police background check done, right? To prove that she had no criminal history or anything like that. Problem was, this would take 3 months at a minimum for you to get your background check results. Our appointment with the embassy was in a month. We tried calling everybody and their grandfather. Can you help us? Can you help us? Can you help us?
I was also so stressed out, right? So I remember that morning I went into work and I couldn't focus on work and whatever I was doing, right? So I was just thinking, how do we get this sorted? Suddenly it just clicked. God was saying, I'm here. I am the high ranking one that you should come and seek for. I am the connection, right? So I was like, yeah, God, you are the main connection, not a high ranking connection, not a human form or whatever it is. God, you are my highest ranking connection. To be honest, that worry and that whatever anxious feeling that I had in myself just disappeared. I was so excited to come back and tell you this.
I remember your exact words. You came back and you said, darling, we've been trying to call this person, that
Yes.
person, this high ranking person, that almighty person, and we have forgotten about the Almighty.
Yes.
I still remember that. You have
Yes.
forgotten about the
The
Almighty.
Almighty. Yes.
So that day we prayed,
Yeah,
right?
as a family, we sat down and we prayed. Yeah.
We said we're not going to rely on any
Nope.
human. We're not going to rely on man.
Nope.
We're going to rely on you. You are the Almighty. You have all the connections.
Yes.
We're going to lay it at your feet.
Yeah.
If you don't want us to go to Poland and this is the reason why, fine.
Yeah. We'll
Right?
accept it.
Yeah. So that's what we did. We laid it at his feet. That night or the next morning, I woke up at around 5 a.m. and I had nothing to do. So I picked up my phone and I started browsing Facebook. And for some reason, in a post from 3 years ago, buried in a reply of a reply to a comment, I saw a name and a phone number. And the comment said, if you need help with this police background check, you can call this person, this lady. So I'm excited now. And I wait for Kavita to wake up. I go to her at 8 a.m. and I say, I got this name and number, and apparently you can call her and she can help. Now, this is a funny story.
So the first thing she asked me, how did you get this number? She was furious. And then I told her I needed this and all that, right? And I needed the consent for this
Background check.
document and all that, just to be signed by your HQ. And then it would be sent to the Ministry of Affairs. This is my name or whatever. I started giving my details without her asking me.
Kavita does this thing, right? I call it the thing. When Kavita wants something, she goes into this mode where she doesn't care what the other person thinks. She just gets what she wants. And it has gotten us through so many situations. Sometimes I'll just look at her and say, darling, it's time to do the thing. And she will go and do it.
If you want to survive, you have to have a thing. So that was my thing, right? So she wasn't really happy about it, but I went on giving my details. She was like grumbling and all that, and it was a Friday, right? And to be honest, government offices on Friday.
Nobody works on a Friday.
Nobody works on Friday, right? I don't know what she was planning, but to be honest, whoever she is, she's very kind. And I'm really sorry, to be honest, what I did. I did what I had to do. In the end of the conversation, I still remember her saying, okay, I'll see what I can do. She didn't promise anything. She didn't say I will do it. She said, I will see what I will do. I can do. That's it, right? And then the end of the conversation, she said, please do not call this number anymore.
And that was it. That was the end of the call. We had no guarantee that she was going to do what she said she would do. So, whoever that kind lady is, you did not have to do it, but thank you. And we're so sorry we ruined your weekend. It was not intentional. So, fast forward back, right? We are telling you these stories because we wanted you to know how barriers were removed by God in that process of us coming to Poland. So, fast forward back to Lent and being now 2 months away from losing everything. I'm sitting down and I'm praying and I'm asking God, you brought me here. You brought us here. You opened all the doors that allowed us to come here. Why are you letting us fail now? This is what I don't understand. Why did you bring us here just to fail so that people could look at us and laugh and say, oh, look, they put their faith in God and God has failed them. I used to read Psalms that echoes those exact same words, right? David would say those things. Do not let my enemies make a mockery out of me. And this is what I used to pray. I used to quote scripture. My prayers were literally scripture that I would take and I would pray it back to God. I said, these are your words. How can you let me fail when these are your words? But I would break down. There were days when my prayers were just me crying. There were days when my prayers was just me groaning because I did not have any tears left. There were days when my prayers were just silence because how many different ways can you ask God to please help me get a job? Right? Words even fail me. I'd run out of things to say and ways to ask. But the one thing we never stopped doing was we never stopped gathering together as a family and saying, please help Daddy find a job. About 2 weeks before the end of Lent, I applied for a job. This one stood out to me. It looked interesting. It was definitely something that I could do easily. I applied for it on a Monday morning. Monday evening, I get a phone call. Hey Kevin, this is Holly, and I was wondering if you'd be interested to interview. And I said, you know what? I would love to interview. And Holly was great, right? Holly was the recruiter. She was so on top of things. She kept things going so quickly. Over the next 2 weeks, all the interviews were done. My final interview was Good Friday afternoon. And I remember finishing that interview and coming down, and I told Kavita, you know what would be really nice? It would be really nice if I got the job today and we can go on Easter Sunday and give a testimony that we did this 40-day fast and prayer and God answered us on the very last day of Lent. We didn't expect it to happen because it was already late Friday evening. No one's going to turn around a proposal and a job offer in less than an hour. But I just told her it would be nice if that happened. So we went about our day doing the chores, getting dinner ready. At 7 p.m., just as we're about to sit down and have dinner, I get a message from Holly. Hey Kevin, would you mind taking a quick call? I said, sure. Holly calls me, I answer the phone, and Holly says, Kevin, I just wanted to let you know before Easter, you got the job. So I was speechless, right? I was speechless and I was stunned and I didn't know what to say or do. But that 40 days of fasting and prayer, the 2 years of waiting, and then that one phone call, it all I could say at that point was, God, you are so good.
Mm.
Now, that was me and the journey and the struggle I was going through. But Kavita was also carrying her own burden in that time, right? So while I was fighting this battle and you saw me going through this day after day of job application after job application, what was happening inside of you?
Well, I did see you, how much you sat down every day. So it was like a routine that you sat down every morning, started applying for jobs after jobs, and putting your 110% of effort into every resume that you created and submitted and all those things, and having a lot of course, so-called advice from people. Oh, when you just the best time for you to submit job, to
I still
apply for
remember.
job. You're mentally exhausted. I could see.
I
I've
was
never.
depressed.
You were defeated. I could see that
Yeah.
you were so defeated, right? And at that point of moment, it was very hard to see that in a person, right? Of course, in a marriage, you wouldn't want to see your other half being like that. You were so defeated. And at that point of moment, you have four young boys who were very energetic, didn't know what was going on around you, thinking that everything is fine, mommy, daddy can provide whatever in the world that they ask for. To be honest, surprisingly, until today, they didn't know that it was
The,
that gap that
yeah,
we were
how close we
how
were.
close we were. They did not realize that, they did not know that we were going to lose everything. They did not feel that there was it was empty, right? They didn't feel anything, the emptiness, because everything that they've asked for until that, up to that time and until today, they have gotten everything that they wanted. I feel like having this, I feel like eating this, I feel like I have everything. They have gotten everything. I don't know how, but we managed to provide, we managed to give. There was always food on the table.
Yep.
I would always go to the kitchen, not worrying what should I cook today, because when I open the fridge, there's always food in there. There's always something to cook. There's always a meal that I can make for my family. And not only that, we will always have more. So God was there in my life already, right? In that moment, right? I already started to understand who is God, what is this God, and all that, right? So my faith was very strong in this God, and I believe that He was there with me, providing these meals to my family. I know when I open the fridge, God, thank you for this meal. I would say, thank you for, I don't know how this came, but thank you. I know it's you. It's not anyone else, right? And we didn't feel anything. I didn't feel that it was, we were running out or whatever it is. Every time that I plan to go and get something, I know would have money to do so, right? And yeah,
You were literally the widow at Zarephath. The flour and the oil never ran out.
Never ran out, right? And I never doubt this was God. He was doing this for us, for our family, right?
And
So,
something just occurred to me, right? As I was waiting for that big miracle of the job coming, you were experiencing the little miracles, the widow's miracle,
yes,
day by day.
yes, day by day,
And that
yeah.
was keeping your faith strong.
Exactly. My faith was so strong in me. I felt God was walking right beside me while I was doing everything else. While I was preparing a meal, God was beside me. I talked to God when I'm in the kitchen cooking. I say, "Thank you, God." Remember when we were talking about connections and all that? And there were few times that I even hooked you up with jobs that
In
from the
your company.
in the place that I was working,
Yeah.
right? And I had that faith in me that, oh, this person would help this person, because the connection that I had was like, I was so close with this person, the hiring managers and all that, right? So why wouldn't they help? Because this is directly, right? So direct. It's not coming from a third party or resumes or whatever. It's so direct, right? So this person really can do something. This hiring manager can help my husband, right? I always thought that. So that evening, after applying for this one particular
Interviewing.
interviewing in this particular job that I thought you would actually get, my hopes was very high on this particular job. I was like so confident. I was so like, yeah, I know you will get it. It's okay because this connection will help me, right? But unfortunately, that afternoon, you got an email saying, we regret to inform you. That
Yeah.
typical email, we are happy, glad you did,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And then the end of the line, they'll say, we regret to inform you. So you made me read that email, I remember, because you were waiting for an answer for almost about a week. She made you wait.
Yeah.
More than that, I think.
More than that, because she
So,
went on leave and oh, they
yeah.
want to. And here's the thing: they promised,
Yeah.
you're the front runner, you're the best
Yeah.
candidate. We're just waiting for the hiring manager to come back and
Yeah.
sign off on it. And then they came back and said, oh, the position is frozen.
Exactly. You didn't get the job. I just broke down. That afternoon, I remember I went up to the room and I came and I was like, literally, that faith that I was carrying in me, that confidence, that God in me and all that, it was keeping me going and keeping everything else going. I questioned God and I asked God, I say, why did you bring me here? Why did you bring us here? For us to experience this. So for us to struggle, just for us to struggle, you brought us here. And yeah, so that was my breaking point. But it was only one point, one day that I broke down, right? Then after that, I was calm. And then, I don't know, something in me felt like God was telling me, in my time, right? In my time. Patience, that's it. That's the only thought that came into my mind and in my heart. Then I immediately was fine again. And then I said, I believe you because you said in your time, right? That's it. Yeah. Until the Good Friday happened.
Until the Good Friday happened. And one thing I can tell you, right? However things worked out, it worked out in the hardest way possible. Let me tell you, if you're looking for a job, if you're in the job market right now, here's a few very common tips and tricks that everyone tells you. Don't apply through LinkedIn. Nobody reads those resumes. Always find a referral. If you try to do an application through a website or LinkedIn, your CV is never going to get in front of the eyes of a recruiter. You know what? This job that I applied for and I got, it was an application through LinkedIn, a LinkedIn easy apply, if you know what that is, which is what people say never works. It was not through a referral. I did not have anyone speaking on my behalf. It was all the things that man said would not work are the things that God used to make it work.
Yeah.
That's one thing that we learned out of this. When God moves, He moves in a way where there is no doubt that He is the one to move. Even the fact that we were in Poland. If we were in Malaysia, we would have had connections, networks that we could
Friends.
fall back on.
Yes.
We were in a place where we were completely abandoned. We only had Him. And so, you know what? All the credit can only go to Him.
Yep. He wants us to know that it's Him and only Him. He wants to claim that Himself.
And honestly, the job that I ended up getting was a job that was far better than any of the other jobs that I had been applying for.
Yeah.
This was the best one.
Never seen you happiest. At the happiest. Yeah.
Now, if you know what that's, if you're going through a wilderness like that right now, where you feel like I've done everything right and the doors are still shut, I want to share with you a verse that carried me through more than any other verse in that time. From Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 3. The Lord said to Abram, "Leave your country, your people, your father's household. Go to the land I will show you. I will bless you." This was my prayer for many, many nights during that Lent period. I said, "Lord, this is your word. You said, leave everything and go to the land that you will show me, and you will bless me." That was your promise. I said, "Father, I have done everything. I have left my family behind. I have left my support network behind. I have come to this land that I believe you have shown me because you opened all those doors for me. Where is the blessing at the end of it, right?" And let me tell you, the blessing did come. But as Kavita said, in his time, Abraham left everything on a promise. That's what we did as well. That wilderness that we were on wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of that story, because after that is when our faith took a jolt and it boosted up, right?
Yeah.
And today this podcast is here because of that journey.
Yes.
Can I pray for you? Father, there is someone listening today who has left everything familiar to follow you. And right now, it feels like you've gone completely quiet. They have waited and tried and hoped and been disappointed so many times that they dare not hope again. Remind them today that you are the God who calls people out and meets them where they are. That the waiting is not abandonment. That Good Friday always precedes resurrection morning. You were faithful to us in Poland, Lord. You will be faithful to all these brothers and sisters, wherever they are. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much for listening to the episode today. We hope it has touched you in some way and it has given you some kind of inspiration to keep carrying on and trying. If something in this episode found you today, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with one person who needs to hear it. Just one. That's how testimony travels. As usual, we have our Patreon that is up and running. If you would like to be a patron and support the show, links are in the show notes. Until the next episode, I'm Kevin,
I'm Kavita.
and this is his faithfulness.
He
He
was
was
faithful.
faithful,
He
he
is
is faithful,
faithful.
he
He
will
will
be
be
faithful.
faithful.